Humans never forget their allies. Their gratitude can shake worlds. 6 months after the Battle of Valarn, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Chancellor Rinna walked through the rebuilt Galactic Council chambers, noting the empty seats where representatives once sat. 1/3 of the Council's member species had withdrawn, their ambassadors departing with formal declarations that shocked the remaining members. She carried those declarations in her diplomatic case. Each one said essentially the same thing. The Council had chosen calculation over compassion. They had voted for neutrality when friends needed help. They had forgotten what civilization meant. These species would not make the same mistake. They were forming something new. The human delegation section was crowded now. 12 new species had requested alliance with humanity, citing the Battle of Valarn as their reason. Ambassador Krell of the Taurians had been particularly vocal. His people were traitors, practical and profit-focused. But watching humanity sacrifice for the Valarn had changed something fundamental in their thinking. "We have spent centuries calculating cost and benefit," Krell said during his public statement. "We measured everything in resources and profit margins. The humans showed us we were measuring the wrong things. What good is wealth without honor? What good is power without friendship? The Galactic Council chose neutrality. We choose to stand with those who remember what matters." Earth itself was in mourning. Every colony, every station, every settlement held memorial services for the fallen. 2,000 names were carved into monuments across human space. President Jiwoo visited families personally, traveling to dozens of worlds to meet with those who had lost loved ones. She told them their sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, friends and partners had ensured humanity would be remembered for honor, not just strength. On Mars, a massive memorial was erected visible from orbit. It listed every name, every ship, every person who died defending the Valarn. At the dedication ceremony, President Jiwoo spoke to billions watching across human space. They did not die for territory. They did not die for resources. They died for a principle that defines us. We do not abandon those who helped us. We do not forget kindness. We do not calculate the acceptable cost of loyalty. She paused, looking at the names carved in stone. Some will say we paid too high a price. They will calculate the losses and question our decision, but I say we paid exactly what friendship costs, and we would pay it again. The Valarn homeworld had become a place of pilgrimage. Elder Vess, the ancient historian, had taken personal responsibility for honoring the human sacrifice. Every human who died was inscribed into the Crystal Archive, the most sacred location in Valarn culture. Their names were carved alongside Valarn heroes from across millennia of history. Supreme Counselor Thrix announced that the Valarn would dedicate their entire civilization to repaying humanity. "We can never truly repay this debt," he said in a broadcast to the galaxy. "But we will spend the rest of our existence trying. The humans are no longer our allies. They are our kin. Their blood mixed with ours in the defense of our world. That bond cannot be broken." Valarn engineers began sharing technology they had never revealed before, ancient systems carefully preserved, that enhanced shield efficiency and improved weapon accuracy. Dr. Hanna worked with Valarn biologists, combining medical knowledge from both species. The resulting advances in medicine saved lives across dozens of worlds. Engineer Daijung collaborated with Valarn technical specialists, creating hybrid systems that were more efficient than either species could produce alone. The political landscape of the galaxy shifted dramatically. The Galactic Council tried to maintain authority, but their influence was eroding. The new alliance, formerly called the Coalition of Remembered Bonds, was attracting members weekly. Species that had watched the Battle of Valarn understood something fundamental. Humanity had proven that loyalty and honor were not weaknesses. They were sources of strength. Minister Bora led the Coalition's technology-sharing initiative. Every advance humanity made, every innovation humanity developed, was shared freely with member species. "We are not building an empire," she explained repeatedly. "We are building trust. That trust is more valuable than any secret technology could ever be." The Kravath Empire, meanwhile, was dealing with unexpected consequences. General Vorn had been executed for failure. Warlord Krath had retreated to his homeworld, his reputation shattered. But more significantly, species that had feared Kravath aggression now saw an alternative. Join the coalition and gain protection from species that would actually fight for their allies. 3 worlds on the Kravath border, requested coalition membership. They brought intelligence about Kravath military installations, trade routes, and strategic weaknesses. The Kravath found themselves suddenly facing organized resistance instead of isolated victims. Their expansion plans ground to a halt. Admiral Taewon, promoted after Admiral Kyung-soo retired, commanded the coalition defense force. He ensured that every new officer learned the history of the Battle of Valarn. Cadets studied Captain Junho's final attack run. They analyzed Private Jae-sung's sacrifice. They learned that tactical brilliance meant nothing without the courage to use it. We won that battle because we were willing to pay the price, Taewon told his officers. The Kravath calculated acceptable losses. We calculated necessary sacrifice. That difference, that willingness to give everything for our friends, that is what makes us effective. Lieutenant Mina, now Captain Mina, commanded the joint human-Valarn vessel, Promise of Tomorrow. It was a hybrid design, combining human weapons technology with Valarn defensive systems. The ship represented everything the Coalition stood for. Different species working together, each contributing their strengths, creating something better than either could build alone. Her crew was mixed, humans and Valarn working side by side. She had worried about integration challenges, cultural misunderstandings, communication problems. Those concerns proved unfounded. When people had fought together, bled together, lost friends together, minor differences seemed irrelevant. Dr. Hana operated a medical research station jointly funded by humanity and the Valarn. Her team was making breakthroughs monthly. Valarn biology responded to human treatments in unexpected ways. Human physiology benefited from Valarn medical techniques. The combination was saving lives and advancing medicine beyond what either species could achieve independently. She thought often about the wounded she had treated during the battle. Human and Valarn, suffering together, helping each other, proving that friendship transcended biology. That experience had shaped everything she did now. Counselor Vex had become an unofficial liaison between the Galactic Council and the Coalition. He had watched everything unfold with growing respect for humanity's approach. His own species, logical and calculating, was reconsidering their entire philosophy. Perhaps, he told his government, we have spent too long calculating and not enough time feeling. The humans have shown us that emotion is not weakness. Properly directed, it is the strongest force in the galaxy. The monument on Valarn became the symbolic center of the Coalition. 50,000 humans traveled there in the months after the battle, descendants of those saved by the Valarn 150 years ago. They came to see where their ancestors' debt had been repaid. They came to understand the price of loyalty. The monument itself was massive, visible from orbit. It depicted a human and a Valarn standing together, hands joined, facing outward as if defending something precious. The inscription was carved in both languages and translated into every major galactic tongue. They saved us when we had nothing to offer. We saved them because that is what friends do. This is the bond that cannot break. Elder Vess gave tours to visitors, telling the story to anyone who would listen. Children asked him questions about the battle, about the humans who came, about why they fought so hard. He answered with patience and detail, ensuring the next generation understood what happened here. The humans taught us something we had forgotten, he explained to a group of young Valarn students. In our ancient history, we once believed that civilization meant protecting the weak and honoring debts. But as we grew older, we became practical. We calculated costs. We measured risks. We forgot, he gestured at the monument. When our world faced destruction, the Galactic Council calculated the cost and chose neutrality. The humans calculated differently. They asked what friendship demanded, not what profit allowed. And they came. They fought. They died for us. One student asked, were they afraid? Of course, Elder Vess replied. Fear is natural. But they came anyway. That is the definition of courage. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Chancellor Rinna attended the 6-month memorial ceremony on Valarn. Thousands gathered, human and Valarn, to remember the fallen and celebrate the friendship that had been forged in fire. She stood beside Supreme Counselor Thrix, watching as names were read aloud, each one representing a life given for this moment. When it was her turn to speak, Rinna kept her words simple. 6 months ago, humanity made a choice. We could have calculated the risks and stayed home. We could have measured the costs and declared them too high. Humans never forget their allies. Their gratitude can shake worlds. The human fleet had grown to 480 ships by the time Warlord Krath arrived. Admiral Kyung-soo watched the sensors track the Cravath Imperial Guard dropping out of hyperspace. 400 vessels, each one larger and more advanced than the warships humanity had faced in the first battle. These were not the standard Cravath military. These were elite warriors, chosen from across the Empire, equipped with the best technology Cravath industry could produce. Commander Tae-wan studied the tactical display with concern. They have positioned themselves to cut us off from retreat. Classic encirclement strategy. They want to trap us here and destroy us completely. Good, Admiral Kyung-soo said quietly. Then we will not have to chase them when we win. Commander Yoon-ji led the civilian volunteer fleet, 300 vessels crewed by people who had never fired a weapon in combat before. She had been a merchant captain, transporting goods between colonies, living a peaceful life. Then the call came for volunteers to help the Valarn. She retrofitted her cargo hauler with weapons and convinced her crew to join her. Now she commanded a squadron of similar ships, all volunteers, all ready to fight. She opened a channel to her fleet. I know you are scared. I am scared too. We are merchants and miners and scientists. We did not train for this. But the Valarn did not train for deep space rescue when they saved our ancestors. They just did what was right. Today we do the same. Dr. Hyunwoo worked frantically in the research vessel Discovery, running calculations on experimental technology. He was a quantum physicist, 50 years old, more comfortable with equations than combat. But his team had been developing something potentially devastating. Quantum displacement technology that could create massive spatial disruptions. The problem was simple and terrible. Any ship that activated the system would be destroyed along with everything around it. He sent his findings to Admiral Kyung-soo. Sir, this weapon could scatter their entire fleet. But the ship that deploys it will not survive. I recommend we program it into an automated drone. The Admiral reviewed the data. The disruption radius was enormous. It would disable hundreds of enemy vessels. But they had no time to build an automated system. Keep the system ready, Doctor. We may need it. Warlord Krath himself appeared on all frequencies, his massive form filling the view screens. He was larger than most Cravath, his scales darker, his eyes burning with arrogance born from centuries of conquest. I am Warlord Krath, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Guard. I have crushed rebellions across 50 systems. I have broken alliances that stood for centuries, and now I will grind this pathetic human fleet into dust. He gestured at the tactical display visible behind him. You fight for species that cannot help you. You sacrifice for allies that offer no reward. This is weakness. This is why your species will fall today. Power respects only power. Sentiment is for the conquered. Admiral Kyung-soo responded with equal broadcast range. You are correct that the Valarn cannot repay us. That was never the point. We fight not for what we gain, but for what we owe. You see that as weakness. We call it civilization. Warlord Krath laughed. Then civilization dies today. All vessels advance. Show them the cost of their foolish loyalty. The Cravath Imperial Guard attacked with coordinated brutality. They moved in perfect formation. Their weapons fire overwhelming human shields. These were not the standard military ships from the first battle. These were warriors who had trained together for decades, who knew each other's tactics instinctively, who fought with the confidence of never having lost. The human fleet met them head-on. Lieutenant Mina worked her weapons console, targeting systems tracking hundreds of enemy ships simultaneously. Her modifications had proven effective against standard Cravath vessels, but the Imperial Guard had different shield configurations. She adapted in real time, finding new weaknesses, exploiting tiny gaps in their defenses. Forward batteries focus fire on their command ships, make them react to us instead of executing their plan. Engineer Dae-jung managed repair systems across the entire fleet, while simultaneously helping Valarn vessels stay operational. His team worked miracles, rerouting power, patching hull breaches, keeping damaged ships in the fight. When the cruiser Defiance lost main power, Dae-jung remotely restarted her reactor core from 3 light seconds away. The crew never stopped fighting. Captain Jun-ho led his fighter squadron into the heart of the Cravath formation. His mission was simple and suicidal. Draw fire away from the capital ships. Make the enemy waste resources on small, fast targets. Keep them off balance. His pilots followed him without hesitation, dancing through enemy fire, striking at vulnerable points, refusing to give the Cravath clean shots at larger vessels. A Cravath battleship targeted Captain Junho's fighter. He evaded, rolled, and dove under their weapons fire. His wingman was not as lucky. The explosion lit up his display, another name added to the growing casualty list. Junho gritted his teeth and continued fighting. Morning would come later. Right now, people needed him. Commander Yunji's civilian fleet proved more effective than anyone expected. Mining ships used industrial cutting lasers to slice through Cravath hull plating. Science vessels deployed experimental weapons that disrupted enemy sensors. Cargo haulers, their holds filled with explosive materials, rammed damaged Cravath ships in desperate attack runs. They were not trained warriors, but they fought with the determination of people defending something precious. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Cravath Imperial Guard pushed forward relentlessly, accepting losses that would have broken lesser fleets. They were willing to sacrifice anything to achieve victory. But so were the humans. Dr. Hana's medical ship, the Mercy's Hand, operated at capacity. Wounded arrived faster than her staff could treat them. Velarn medics worked alongside human doctors, their forearms moving with practiced efficiency. She saved lives, watched others die, and continued working. There would be time for grief later. Right now, people needed her. Then the Cravath broke through the defensive line. A squadron of Imperial Guard cruisers punched through the human formation, heading directly for the Velarn homeworld. Their intention was clear. If they could not defeat the human fleet quickly, they would bombard the planet below, force humanity to choose between protecting their ships or protecting the Velarn civilians. Captain Junho saw the breakthrough and reacted instantly. His squadron was out of position, his ship damaged, his weapons at 40% capacity. It did not matter. He kicked his engines to maximum burn and intercepted the Cravath cruisers. All fighters with me. We cannot let them reach the planet. His small squadron of 30 fighters faced 8 heavy cruisers. The mathematics were impossible. The outcome was certain. Junho attacked anyway. His weapons fire hammered the lead cruiser, drawing its attention. The battleship returned fire, and Junho's ship took critical damage. Hull breaches, engine failure, life support failing. His cockpit filled with smoke and warning alarms. But he was between the Cravath and the planet. He refused to move. Admiral Kyung-soo watched helplessly from the Remembrance, too far away to help. "Captain Junho, withdraw." "That is an order." Junho's response came through static and damage. "Sorry, Admiral. Cannot comply. Too many people down there counting on us." He paused, his voice growing quieter. "Tell them we remembered." He turned his dying ship directly toward the Cravath bombardment formation and fired his engines one final time. The explosion when he struck the lead cruiser destroyed both vessels and damaged 2 others. The breakthrough was stopped. The planet was safe. Captain Junho was gone. The human fleet seemed to pause, a moment of shock rippling through every ship. Then something changed. Commander Taewon saw it on his displays. Human ships stopped fighting defensively. They pressed forward with renewed intensity, accepting damage they had previously avoided, targeting enemy vessels with focused fury. Warlord Krath noticed it too. The humans were not retreating. They were not calculating acceptable losses. They were fighting like they had nothing to lose and everything to prove. His tactical officers reported something disturbing. Human casualties were climbing, but combat effectiveness was increasing. It made no sense. Private Jae-sung sat in the cockpit of his damaged frigate watching the battle unfold around him. He was 21 years old, barely qualified for combat duty. His ship had taken heavy damage, most systems offline, crew evacuated. He should have evacuated too, but he heard Dr. Hyun-woo's transmission about the quantum displacement weapon. Someone needed to deploy it. Someone needed to get to the center of the Cravath Imperial Guard formation. He had studied the Velarn rescue in school, learned how they sacrificed themselves to save humans they never met. People like him, young and afraid but willing to do what was necessary. "This is Private Jae-sung," he transmitted to Admiral Kyung-soo, requesting permission to deploy the experimental weapon. "Negative," the Admiral responded immediately. "We are developing an automated system. Stand by. With respect, sir, we do not have time. The Cravath are regrouping for another push. Let me do this." His voice steadied. "The Velarn gave their lives for people they never knew. Let me give mine for people I do know, for friends worth dying for." Humans never forget their allies. Their gratitude can shake worlds. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 300 species argued, shouted, and accused each other across the vast circular room. At the center of it all stood the holographic projection of the Battle of Valarn, playing on repeat for everyone to see. Human ships fighting against impossible odds, Valarn defenders holding their ground with renewed courage, Cravath vessels retreating in confusion and anger. Counselor Vex, a floating crystalline entity from a neutral species, watched the footage with growing fascination. His people had been part of the Galactic Council for 2,000 years. They had seen countless conflicts, mediated hundreds of wars, and prided themselves on logical decision-making. But watching humanity throw itself into battle for a species that could offer nothing in return challenged every assumption Vex held about galactic politics. The Cravath ambassador, a massive-scaled creature named Thorm, slammed his clawed hand on his podium. The Council must sanction humanity immediately. They have interfered in our legitimate territorial expansion. This is an act of war against the Cravath Empire. Ambassador Yuna stood in the human delegation section, her face calm despite the hostility surrounding her. She had expected this. The entire galaxy was watching to see how humanity would justify its actions. She tapped her console and requested permission to speak. The chamber's AI recognized her request and dimmed the other podiums, focusing attention on the human representative. The Galactic Council chose neutrality regarding the Valarn situation. Yuna began, her voice clear and steady. You followed your protocols. You calculated the costs. You determined that intervention was not practical. We understand your reasoning. We simply do not share it, Thorm interrupted. You violated galactic law. You attacked Cravath vessels without provocation. Yuna met his eyes without flinching. We defended our allies from aggression. The Valarn asked for help. We answered. That is not a violation of law. That is the definition of friendship. The Valarn are not your formal allies, another counselor shouted. You have no treaty obligation. You are correct, Yuna agreed. We have no treaty. We have something older and more important. We have a debt of honor. She uploaded files to the central display. The entire council watched as historical footage played. The Pioneer's Hope drifting in space, its hull breached and systems failing. Valarn ships arriving. Their crews working desperately to save human lives. Valarn medics treating human children. Valarn engineers dying in hard vacuum to patch human ships. 16 Valarn giving their lives for 50,000 humans they had never met. The chamber fell silent. The Galactic Council advised the Valarn not to help us, Yuna continued. You told them it was not practical. You warned them it would cost resources they could not spare. You calculated the odds and recommended they ignore our distress call. The Valarn came anyway. They saved us. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. She paused, letting her words sink in. 150 years later, when they needed help, the Galactic Council made the same calculation. Not practical. Too costly. The odds are unfavorable. So you chose neutrality. Her voice hardened. Humanity chose friendship. Counselor Vex found himself leaning forward, captivated. This human was not arguing law or policy. She was arguing something his species had forgotten existed. Principle that transcended calculation. Thorm tried again. Your emotional appeals do not change the facts. You have 180 ships. We have mobilized 600. You cannot win. Withdraw now or face destruction, Yuna smiled. It was not a friendly smile. We received your threat. I have been authorized to deliver Earth's response. She uploaded a new file. The display showed a view of Earth orbit. Counselor Vex's eyes widened. The space around humanity's homeworld was filling with ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Military vessels, yes, but also merchant ships being retrofitted with weapons. Mining vessels equipping themselves with mass drivers. Science ships installing experimental technology. Civilian transports volunteering to carry supplies and reinforcements. This footage is 6 hours old, Yuna explained. By now, another 300 human vessels are en route to Valarn space. Our colonies are sending more. Our stations are contributing what they can. Every human settlement, no matter how small, is preparing to help. She looked directly at Thorm. You want to calculate odds? Calculate this. Every human being from Earth to the furthest colony has voted to defend the Valarn. Unanimous. Billions of people. One decision. We will not abandon our friends. We will not calculate the acceptable level of sacrifice. We will fight until you leave or until we have nothing left to fight with. The Kravath ambassador's scales paled. He had studied human psychology, but this was beyond anything his analysts had predicted. An entire species mobilizing for war over a debt most of them had not even known existed a week ago. It was irrational. It was impossible. It was happening. You would risk everything for them? Thorm asked, genuinely confused. They risked everything for us, Yuna replied simply. How can we do less? On Earth, President Jiwoo was addressing a global assembly. Every screen on every world showed her speech. She stood in the rebuilt United Nations building in Geneva, the same place where humanity had unified after the first contact with galactic civilization. Behind her, the flags of every nation still hung, reminders of a time when humanity was divided. Those divisions seem trivial now. The Galactic Council has questioned our decision to defend the Valarn, President Jiwoo said. They call it impractical. They call it risky. They calculate the costs and find them too high. They are not wrong about the risks. This will be expensive. This will be dangerous. We will lose ships. We will lose lives. She paused, her next words carrying the weight of human history. But there are some things worth any price. Friendship is one of them. Honor is another. The Valarn did not calculate odds when our colony ship was dying. They did not measure the cost of saving us. They simply came. Now they need us and we will come, because that is who humanity chooses to be. The response was overwhelming. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers faster than the military could process them. Shipyards worked around the clock, converting civilian vessels to combat capability. Research stations shared experimental technology freely, accelerating innovation by years. Every human colony contributed what it could. Food, medicine, weapons, ships, volunteers, the machinery of an entire civilization bent toward a single purpose. Admiral Sungmin, commander of Earth's home defense fleet, had initially opposed stripping Earth's defenses to help the Valarn. His job was protecting humanity's homeworld, and sending ships away seemed reckless. But his daughter, a university student on Mars, had sent him a message. It was simple. Dad, you taught me that good people stand up for their friends. Be a good person. He approved the deployment of another 50 ships from Earth's orbital defense network. Minister Bora unveiled the technology program her department had been developing in secret. Advanced shield harmonics, improved weapons targeting, better armor plating. She had been saving these innovations for humanity's own defense, but now she ordered them shared freely with the Valarn. We are not building an empire, she told her staff. We are building trust. That is more valuable than any weapon. Back at the Valarn homeworld, Supreme Counselor Thrix received reports of the human mobilization. He could barely believe the numbers. An entire species was coming to his people's defense. Valarn historians searched their archives for any precedent. They found none. No species in galactic history had ever mobilized so completely for another race's survival. Elder Vess, the oldest Valarn alive, visited Thrix in his damaged command center. The ancient historian moved slowly, his crystalline body showing cracks from centuries of life. I have studied the records of every civilization in the galaxy, Vess said quietly. I thought I understood how species think, how they make decisions. The humans have taught me I understood nothing. What do you mean? Thrix asked her. Most species think in terms of cost and benefit, trade and territory, resources and power. The humans think in terms of friendship and honor. They measure success not in what they gain, but in what they give. Vess touched the recordings of human ships fighting for Valarn. They are either the wisest species in the galaxy, or the most foolish. Perhaps those are the same thing. Commander Taewan stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, watching sensors detect the new human arrivals. 300 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace. Each one broadcast the same message painted on their hulls in letters large enough to see from orbit. We remember. He opened a channel to Admiral Kyung-soo. The reinforcements have arrived, sir. Also receiving word that more are coming. The Kravath are not going to like this. The Admiral allowed himself a rare smile. No, they are not. Prepare to integrate the new arrivals into our formation. When the Kravath return, they will find humanity ready. Lieutenant Mina worked with the new arrivals, coordinating their weapon systems with the main fleet. Many were civilian ships, hastily armed but crewed by volunteers who understood the risks. She found their determination inspiring. These were teachers, miners, merchants, scientists. They had no military training. They came anyway. Humans never forget their allies. Their gratitude can shake worlds. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Valarn system in a perfect combat formation. Admiral Kyung-soo stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, watching the tactical display update with enemy positions. 300 red dots represented Cravath warships, arranged in a blockade formation around the blue-green world below. 40 yellow dots showed what remained of the Valarn defensive fleet, battered and barely holding position near their homeworld. "Open a channel to the Valarn command," Admiral Kyung-soo ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands gripped the railing tight enough to hurt. He had studied the battle reports during the journey. The Valarn had been fighting for 8 days straight, their ships taking damage they could barely repair, their crews exhausted beyond measure. They were still fighting, still refusing to surrender. The view screen flickered and Supreme Counselor Thrix appeared. His crystalline face showed new cracks and one of his forearms hung limp at his side. Behind him, the Valarn command center was filled with smoke and emergency lights. When he saw the human ships on his sensors, his compound eyes brightened with disbelief. "You came," he whispered in standard Galactic. "You actually came." Admiral Kyung-soo nodded once. "Of course we came. Did you think we would forget?" Thrix's translator struggled with the emotion in his voice. "You should not be here. You should not risk your people for us. We cannot repay this debt. We have nothing to offer." Commander Taewon stepped forward into the camera's view. The Valarn leader recognized him immediately from the intelligence briefings humanity had sent ahead. "The man born on a Valarn rescue ship. The child saved by Valarn medics. You already gave us everything," Taewon said quietly. "You gave us our lives, our futures, our children. We are just paying it forward." The Cravath had detected the human arrival. General Vorn, commander of the blockade fleet, transmitted on all frequencies. His species looked vaguely reptilian, with scaled skin and cold yellow eyes. His message dripped with contempt. "Unknown vessels, you are interfering in Cravath territorial expansion. Depart immediately or be destroyed with the Valarn primitives." Admiral Kyung-soo switched channels. When he responded, his transmission broadcast across every frequency, ensuring that every ship in the system and every listening post in nearby space would hear. "This is Admiral Kyung-soo of the Human Defense Fleet. The Valarn are under our protection. Withdraw your forces or face the consequences." General Vorn laughed. The sound was harsh and grating. "Humanity. Yes, we know of you. Newcomers to the galaxy. Barely 2 centuries since first contact. You think 180 ships frighten us? We have crushed species with larger fleets than yours. You have 6 hours to reconsider your foolish decision." Admiral Kyung-soo ended the transmission without responding. He turned to his crew. "All ships, battle stations. Prepare firing solutions on their command vessels. Launch defensive drones. Bring point defense systems online. Engineering, I want maximum power to shields and weapons." He paused, then added, "And someone send a message to the Valarn fleet. Tell them we are here to fight beside them, not in front of them. They have earned the right to defend their home." Lieutenant Mina worked at the weapons console, her fingers flying across the controls. She was young, only 27, but she had designed half the targeting systems the fleet now used. "Admiral, I am detecting weaknesses in their shield harmonics. If we modulate our weapons to these frequencies, we can punch through with 40% more effectiveness." "Make it so," the Admiral ordered. "Transmit the modulation data to all ships." Engineer Dai Jung appeared on the internal comm screen from the engine room. "Admiral, I have reviewed the Valarn ship specifications they sent us. Their vessels are old, but the core systems are solid. With your permission, I can remote link to their engineering networks and help with repairs during the battle." "Permission granted. Help them however you can." The 6 hours passed intense preparation. The human fleet moved into position, coordinating with the Valarn defenders. Dr. Hana's medical ship, the Mercy's Hand, positioned itself in the safest area of the formation, ready to receive casualties. Captain Junho took his fighter squadron, the Eternal Wing, and began running sensor sweeps of the Cravath fleet, looking for weaknesses. When the deadline expired, General Vorn sent no warning. The Cravath fleet simply opened fire. Space lit up with energy beams and missile trails. The battle began with savage intensity. Cravath ships moved forward in waves, confident in their numerical advantage. They had fought this kind of battle dozens of times before. Surround, overwhelm, destroy. It had always worked. This time was different. Human ships moved with precision that shocked the Cravath commanders. They had studied human tactics during the brief journey from Earth, but nothing prepared the Cravath for how well humanity fought. Captains anticipated each other's moves. Weapon systems targeted enemy weak points with surgical accuracy. When Cravath ships concentrated fire on one vessel, two others moved to cover it while a third attacked the Cravath from an unexpected angle. Lieutenant Mina's weapons modifications proved devastating. The first volley of human fire punched through Cravath shields, damaging ships that had thought themselves safe. General Vorn watched in growing alarm as his formation began to buckle. These humans fought like they had been warriors for centuries, not decades. Engineer De Jung linked to the Velarn fleet and began working miracles. A Velarn cruiser with a damaged power core suddenly surged back to full strength. An old destroyer that had been leaking atmosphere sealed its hull breaches. Velarn captains reported systems coming online that had been offline for years. The human engineer was reaching across space itself to help them, and it was working. Captain Junho led his squadron into the heart of the Cravath formation. His pilots flew their fighters with reckless bravery, drawing fire away from larger ships and exploiting gaps in enemy defenses. Junho himself destroyed 3 Cravath frigates in the first 30 minutes of combat, his weapons systems guided by instinct and experience. The Velarn fought with renewed strength. Seeing humanity risk everything for them, they found reserves of courage they did not know they possessed. Their old ships, repaired and supported by human engineering, struck back at the Cravath with determination. Supreme Counselor Thrix personally took command of the defense network, coordinating fire patterns with Admiral Kyung-soo. But the Cravath had numbers. For every ship the humans disabled, 2 more moved forward. General Vornen regrouped his forces and adapted his tactics. He had underestimated humanity, but he was a skilled commander. He began targeting human support vessels, trying to force the fleet to spread out and weaken its defensive formation. A Cravath cruiser broke through the line and fired on the Mercy's hand. Dr. Hana watched the enemy ship approach on her screen, knowing her medical vessel had minimal weapons. Then Captain Junho's fighter squadron appeared, hammering the Cravath ship with everything they had. The cruiser turned to face this new threat, and a Velarn destroyer, newly repaired by Engineer De Jung, delivered the killing blow. "Thank you," Dr. Hana transmitted to both the human and Velarn ships. "That is what friends do," came the reply from the Velarn captain. The battle raged for 8 hours. Human ships took damage. The destroyer Phoenix lost power and drifted, her crew evacuating to rescue ships. The cruiser Valor took a direct hit to her engine section, killing 37 crew members instantly. Commander Taewon watched each loss, feeling the weight of every sacrifice. But the Cravath were losing more. Lieutenant Mina's targeting systems, Engineer De Jung's repairs, Captain Junho's fighter tactics, and Admiral Kyung-soo's strategic brilliance combined into something the Cravath could not overcome. General Vorn finally admitted to himself what his tactical officers had been reporting for hours. They were losing. The Cravath fleet pulled back, regrouping at the edge of the system. They had lost 43 ships destroyed and another 70 damaged. The human Velarn alliance had lost 8 ships destroyed and 30 damaged. The numbers were impossible. General Vorn had fought with overwhelming superiority and still been pushed back. He sent a transmission to Cravath High Command. His report was simple and terrifying. The humans are not like other species. They fight with intensity that defies logic. They sacrifice themselves for allies without hesitation. They coordinate like a single organism. We need reinforcements, many reinforcements. On the Remembrance, Admiral Kyung-soo allowed himself one moment of relief. They had survived the first engagement, but he knew this was just the beginning. The Cravath would return with more ships and the next battle would be even harder. Supreme Counselor Thrix appeared on the view screen again. This time, tears ran down his crystalline face. In Velarn culture, tears were rare and meaningful. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you sacrifice so much for us?" Commander Taewon answered before the Admiral could speak. "Because 150 years ago, you asked yourselves the same question about us, and you came anyway. You came because it was right. We came because you taught us what friendship means." Across the Velarn homeworld, billions of people watched the battle through their networks. They saw human ships taking damage meant for Velarn vessels. Humans never forget their allies. Their gratitude can shake worlds. The holographic display flickered in the dim council chamber, casting blue light across Ambassador Yuna's tired face. She had been awake for 36 hours, ever since the emergency transmission arrived from the outer sectors. Her hands trembled slightly as she played the message again, watching the desperate plea from Supreme Counselor Thrix of the Velarn people. The insectoid leader's crystalline face showed cracks of stress, his compound eyes dim with exhaustion. Behind him, explosions lit up the sky of his homeworld. The Cravath Empire had come, and they had come with overwhelming force. 300 warships now surrounded the peaceful Velarn system, demanding surrender and annexation. The Galactic Council had already voted. They chose neutrality. The Velarn would stand alone. Yuna closed her eyes and thought back to the history files she had reviewed throughout the night. 150 years ago, humanity had been the ones dying in the darkness of space. The colony ship Pioneer's Hope carried 50,000 souls toward a new world when disaster struck. The fusion core destabilized, life support began failing, and the ship drifted helplessly in an uncharted system. Help was months away. Everyone aboard knew they would die. Then the Velarn came. They were a minor species barely noticed by the major galactic powers. Their technology was old, their military weak, and their economy fragile. But when they detected the human distress signal, they did not hesitate. Supreme Counselor Thrix, young then but already wise, ordered every available ship to the rescue site. The Galactic Council warned them against it. Helping an unknown species would cost them valuable resources and anger the territorial powers who claimed that region of space. The Velarn came anyway. Yuna had watched the old recordings a dozen times through the night. Velarn engineers in primitive pressure suits, working in hard vacuum to patch human hull breaches. Velarn medics, their forearms moving with precise care, treating human children they had never seen before. Velarn merchant vessels, stripped of their cargo to make room for refugees. Their captains, knowing this choice would bankrupt them. 16 Velarn died saving the Pioneer's Hope. They sealed hull breaches with their own bodies when materials ran out. They breathed the last oxygen from their suits into human medical bays. They flew their ships beyond safe limits to tow the massive colony vessel to safety. When human rescue ships finally arrived, the Velarn asked for nothing in return. They simply said that saving lives was never a mistake. Now the Velarn were the ones who needed saving. Yuna stood from her chair and straightened her formal jacket. She had a meeting with the unified human government in 2 hours. The journey from the council chambers to Earth would take every minute of that time. She gathered her files, loaded the historical records, and headed to the transport bay. As she walked through the corridors of the massive space station, other species watched her pass. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked away. The galaxy had learned to be practical. Sentiment was a luxury that led to costly mistakes. Humanity, Yuna knew, had never been practical about friendship. The government chamber on Earth was packed when she arrived. President Jiwoo sat at the center of the curved table, surrounded by military commanders, planetary governors, and civilian advisors. Commander Tae-wan stood near a tactical display, his weathered face unreadable. Dr. Hana sat with a stack of data tablets, already analyzing everything about Velarn biology and technology. Captain Junho leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his pilot's jacket showing patches from a dozen dangerous missions. Yuna did not waste time with pleasantries. She uploaded the files to the central display and began her presentation. The room fell silent as footage played. Velarn workers welding human hull sections, Velarn medics cradling human infants in their forearms, Velarn captains ordering their crews to give humans their own food and water, even as their ships ran dangerously low. Then she showed the current situation. Cravath warships unleashing weapons on Velarn orbital stations, Velarn defensive ships, old and outgunned, trying desperately to protect their homeworld. Supreme Counselor Thrix, the same leader who had ordered the rescue of humanity, now watching his people face extinction. President Jiwoo spoke first. Her voice was quiet but carried the weight of 10 billion souls. The Galactic Council chose neutrality. Yes, Madam President, Yuna confirmed. They expect us to do the same. They do. Commander Tae-wan stepped forward, his boots clicking on the polished floor. He had served in the military for 30 years and had never advocated for war lightly. But now his words came hard and fast. I was born on the Pioneer's Hope. My mother was 8 months pregnant when the core failed. Valarn medics delivered me in an emergency bay on one of their rescue ships. They gave my mother blood substitutes from their own supplies to keep her alive. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every person present. I exist because the Valarn chose compassion over practicality. Every person born on that colony ship, every child and grandchild that came after, we all owe our lives to species that had every reason to ignore our distress call. Dr. Hana set down her tablets. I have reviewed their current situation. The Cravath have numerical superiority and better weapons technology. Any intervention would be costly. We would lose ships. We would lose people. The Galactic Council would condemn us. Some species might see it as aggression. The room waited. Dr. Hana stood slowly, her scientist's mind having already calculated every variable. We should go anyway. Some debts cannot be measured in resources or political capital. The Valarn taught us that. Captain Junho pushed off from the wall. My ship can be ready in 6 hours. The Eternal Dawn is fast. I can have the first scout reports from Valarn space in 3 days. President Jiwoo raised her hand for silence. She looked at each face in the room, reading the determination there. Then she turned to the larger display, where the governors of every human colony and station waited for her decision. We need a vote, she said simply. The vote took less than 5 minutes. Earth voted to intervene. Mars voted to intervene. Every colony, every station, every outpost in human space voted the same way. Not a single dissenting voice, not one calculation of cost or risk that mattered more than honor. President Jiwoo stood and addressed the gathered leaders. Begin fleet mobilization. Every combat-ready vessel, every support ship, every transport that can be spared. We move in 72 hours. She paused, her next words carrying across every human world through the broadcast. The Valarn saved us when we had nothing to offer them. They expected no reward. They asked for no payment. They helped because it was right. Now they need us, and we will show them that humanity remembers. Commander Taewan pulled up the tactical maps of Valarn space. The Cravath blockade was tight, their formation professional. They had 300 warships against 40 Valarn defenders. The mathematics of war said the Valarn would fall within a week. We can mobilize 180 capital ships on this timeline, he said. We will be outnumbered. Then we fight outnumbered, President Jiwoo replied. Captain Junho smiled grimly. The Valarn fought outnumbered to save us. Seems only fair we return the favor. As the meeting dispersed and the machinery of war began turning, Yuna sent one final message to Supreme Counselor Thrix. It was simple and direct. Hold on, humanity is coming. 72 hours later, the human fleet assembled at the edge of Valarn space. 180 warships with Commander Taewan aboard the flagship Remembrance. They faced an enemy that had already dismissed them as insignificant newcomers. The Cravath Empire had conquered dozens of systems and crushed countless defensive forces. They expected this to be no different. As the human fleet prepared to jump into Valarn space, Commander Taewan opened a channel to all ships. His message was brief. The Valarn came for us when no one else would. They saved our families. They gave us our futures. Today we pay that forward. Today humanity remembers. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the safety of human territory behind. They were heading into a battle they might not win, against an enemy that outnumbered them for a people they had never fought beside. But every human aboard those ships knew exactly why they were going. Some debts could never be forgotten. Some friendships were worth any price. And humanity had never been good at leaving friends behind.